Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but it is Friday, November 1st, 2024. We are 4 days from the election. We are in November, though it is a beautiful 70 degrees here in New York City, so it doesn't feel like November, and it doesn't, oddly, despite the fact that we've been now talking about this for 2 years, it doesn't really feel like the election is upon us, although I read that 65 million people have already voted nationwide. And I think in 1972, 65 million people was the electorate of the United States. So just to give you a sense of where America is now versus where it was 50 years ago, the lower end of projections have it that we're going to see somewhere around 147 million votes in this country, and the upper projections are that it'll be closer to 160. That's a pretty striking fact, and finds us we're at this weird paralytic moment where we're on the one hand like a third, more than a third of the electorate has voted, or more, and on the other hand, then 2/3 are still going to vote. News is being broken, but we don't know how much effect that's going to have if people have already voted. And to discuss this, we have, of course, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John. And by the way,
editors. Yes,
to me, it does very much feel like the election is upon us.
Oh, good. I don't know why I had this feeling that it's like it's been so long that I don't know what life is going to be like when we're not discussing the 2024 election, since we started literally January 21st, 2021, with the idea, well, Trump is obviously going to run again, and this is all going to happen again. And Nietzsche was right, and here we are. So that's why I'm in this. Maybe I just can't understand how we're going to transition to a different mode of reality, though maybe we're not, which we can also discuss with senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
And of course, media commentary columnist and author of The Extinction of Experience, the #1 book so far in 2024, according to Esquire magazine, in its best books of the year so far feature, Extinction of Experience, #1. So go get it at Kindle today. Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
And the director of domestic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute, and our Washington commentary columnist and columnist for the Free Beacon, Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, John. And that's great news about Christine's book. I didn't realize it was about luxury handbags and expensive colognes and watches I'll never be able to afford in a million years, to put it in the Esquire
I know, I'm capturing the luxury celebrity market. This is my new...
I didn't realize, the extinction of experience is being sold at Givenchy outlets.
That's right.
Swarovski crystals.
Luxury good.
But so it is in fact the cheapest item you can buy in the Esquire catalog. So and on Kindle, very, very I would say very reasonably priced. So
that's wonderful.
Though of course I think Christine would prefer you buy the hardcover, since the book itself is all about how doing things like reading stuff on the Kindle, it leads to the extinction of experience. So, but nonetheless, I think she would have readers wherever she can find them. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Well, the #1 book of 2024, as judged by the editors of Esquire, the Extinction of Experience. Okay. There are so many different places to go. I don't know where to go. So, Matt, you write for the Free Beacon. I write for the Free Beacon. We all love the Free Beacon. The Free Beacon has an extraordinarily important story that isn't really bound to the election, but speaks to the partisan madness that has afflicted the United States. A story by Adam Credo about the report of House Committee on the anti-Semitic hijinks on campus over the past year, revealing that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer advised officials at Columbia University not to talk to Republicans about what they were seeing on campus, because maybe it would all just blow away, and that only Republicans were really meaning among elected officials, only Republicans were the ones who were really interested in this, and therefore he obviously had a partisan interest in quieting and shutting down and softening this matter rather than highlighting the evil that was going on at the most prestigious university in his own state that he represents as the highest ranking Jewish official in American history, according to him, which is, among other things, not true. Since there is no rank, Senate Majority Leader is not a ranked position.
And the
Jewish governor like Josh Shapiro is a higher ranked person than the Senate Majority Leader.
Yeah. And Schumer, of course, is the self-appointed guardian of Israel.
The guardian of the gates of Jerusalem, the Shomer meaning guard or guardian, and his people, as his name suggests, he is there as the guardian of the gates of Jerusalem from time immemorial, telling officials at Columbia University to keep it to themselves or not to cooperate or to do whatever they could to soft pedal the story about the outbreak of anti-Semitism on their campus. So aside from highlighting that fact, which is an interesting fact to highlight in a week in which, let us go through the week here, an illegal immigrant from the nation of Mauritania entering the United States across the southern border at San Diego last year gets to Chicago, and last Saturday morning at 9:30 in the morning repeatedly shoots an Orthodox Jew in the neighborhood of West Rogers Park in Chicago who was on his way to synagogue shouting Allahu Akbar before he was gunned down, though he's not dead, but was shot by Chicago police. A couple of days later in Brooklyn, another Orthodox Jew was slashed in the face with a razor in another, obviously, a hate crime dictated by the visible outward manifestations of the victim's Jewish life. And a Chabad house in Pittsburgh was defaced 6 years after in the week that the Tree of Life synagogue was shot up, 6 years to the week in that very same city. And we now have evidence that the highest ranking Jewish official in the United States did not want people to discuss the rise of anti-Semitism because it might be helpful to Republicans. Why it would be helpful to Republicans when he could have made hay out of it himself and maybe helped his own party look like it cared about this matter is something we can discuss.
He has the example of his colleague, John Fetterman, who has been a stalwart defender of Israel and of the Jewish people in the diaspora and has not suffered one iota for it politically. In fact, has, I think, been empowered by his stance. Schumer's behavior, I think, is in character because partisanship is a heck of a drug, and his, flowery self-description has never really squared with the reality of his actions. But it is worth thinking about for a moment because I think it shows the frame of mind that most top Democrats have. From the beginning of the war in Israel, and especially the beginning of this year, there was the joke that Biden had a two-state strategy, two-state solution, Michigan and Nevada, and everything was being funneled through the idea of saving those two swing states from Donald Trump. And so you would downplay the anti-Semitism. You would try to pressure Israel into ending the war as soon as possible, simply to placate the constituencies in those two states that might be anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. And Schumer's move seems to be part of that. The question is, will it work? And we won't know until Tuesday.
The Democrats lucked out in the following way. They wanted to make peace with the pro-Hamas scum. The pro-Hamas scum did not want to make peace with them, which helped them because they were excuse me. The Democrats were eager to say these people have a point. What they said, what that gentleman brings up there is true of crazy exterminationist anti-Israel protesters. But those protesters ended up waging war on the Democrats as well as on the entire establishment. And electorally, I think that is to the Democrats' benefit, despite themselves. I mean, they were all like Schumer's, you know.
That's a very interesting political game to play when we think ahead to post-election results.
It was like a forced Sister Soldier moment, Abe, you're saying. They didn't want a Sister Soldier moment. Sister Soldier came to them.
But the Harris campaign is understanding in this final week, though, that they have a problem. Who they're sending to Michigan is Richie Torres with Doug Emhoff. So they're starting to realize that maybe they should have been a little more bold, particularly in a state like Michigan with not being so anti-Jewish. I think the other point that came up in the House report that the Free Beacon noted is that even the universities, Harvard, for example, in drafting its first response to the protests, actually wanted to condemn the violence of Hamas and defend the taking of, or condemn the taking of hostages. And then they toned down and tamped down that to satisfy what was already developing on campus as a very hostile, very anti-Jewish, very anti-Semitic group of students and administrators. So I think there's going to be, it's a long report. It's worth there's a link to it, and you can read it yourself. It's horrifying. Some of the details, not just from Columbia and Harvard, but Northwestern, other schools where they completely allowed this to run the campus.
I think that's a very interesting take, Christine, because it strikes me that everyone's initial impulse after October 7th, 2023 was to be horrified and to condemn the barbarism of Hamas on that day. And yet, in the year since, there's been, in fact, a normalization of Hamas's actions, including the sexual violence.
Right.
And so it's not just Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, The Message, that he, in his interviews, him telling Trevor Noah, yeah, I don't know, maybe I would have done what Hamas did. We now have this social media personality, a YouTuber named Hassan Piker, whose rhetoric is going straight toward Hezbollah land and Hamas land. And he too is saying, "Oh, well, you know, what is this? This is war. This is what happens." And so, I think we have to begin to ask: how did we get from the normal instinct, which would be to say, "Oh my God, this is an atrocity," right? Which many of us share, most people shared, to now where it's somehow a matter of debate about whether Hamas's actions were, no biggie.
And these institutions that you're reporting on played a huge role in that. That transition was played out in public, right? And so over the course of, and I'm not even talking about necessarily what they taught in the classroom, but over the course of months, these institutions were the ones who were very publicly kowtowing and backing down and changing their statements, right? There were other examples of changed statements and taking out phrases and things like that so people didn't get angry. And that's what everybody was watching. And, this report from the House committee, the other thing about it is that all these college, university officials, they could not possibly care less about the effect that this is having on the discourse. This shift that you mentioned from the normal human instinct to be horrified at rape and murder to somehow rationalizing it, they think it's a joke. There are text messages in this report that they have between officials in the university. All these messages are just kind of ridiculing the whole thing and saying, there's at one hearing, Claire Shipman, who is, on the board of trustees at Columbia, the New York Times, when she testified, the New York Times talked about how she had stuck the landing. Other officials had been asked about eliminationist anti-Jewish rhetoric on campus and whether it crosses lines or breaks rules and norms. And they all got tripped up on it. And the New York Times summed up Claire Shipman by saying that Shipman answered a question that tripped up leaders at the last hearing firmly and succinctly. And also in the article, you can see that Ms. Shipman told lawmakers that she was, quote, grateful for the spotlight that you are putting on this ancient hatred. And then in the House report, we have Claire Shipman saying, maybe the students can all unite in their hatred of us, exclamation point. And we have to do some things, some events with Rashid Khalidi. That won't be popular in some groups, but he is a respected academic, Rashid Khalidi, who was the subject of some of those debates at the hearing where Manoush Shafiq, who was at the time, very briefly, the president of Columbia University, was sort of moved into denouncing Rashid Khalidi, who has a reputation as someone who has outwardly bullied Jewish students and made the campus a pretty uncomfortable place for Jews for a long time and was rewarded with tenure for it. And Manoush Shafiq was asked about that, and she was sort of nudged into, denouncing him in a way that she shouldn't have been nudged to do so. And Claire Shipman was behind the scenes saying, all right, let's get Rashid Khalidi out there. Let's apologize privately to Rashid Khalidi. Let's do events with Rashid.
And wasn't it Columbia's own report, which I think went into just how awful the campus has become for Jewish students? And as a Columbia alum, I have to say, reading those details, not about speech, but about actual conduct and behavior, I was horrified because when I was there now a quarter of a century ago, it was a lively Jewish presence on campus. It was known for its Jewish community. And to read about what has happened, it's because the institution was taken over and captured by figures like Rashid Khalidi.
Right. Well, let's talk about Claire Shipman, because that gets to the way in which the institutions, the elite institutions of the United States, including the House and the Senate, or the Democrats in the House and the Senate, how this all connects up in a very strange way. Claire Shipman was a CNN correspondent for many years. She was in Russia as a young woman. She then did other stuff. She then became the author of books about work-life balance and being a woman in the workplace and how to succeed and all of that. She ends up on the Columbia board. Her husband, Jay Carney, was Bill Clinton's White House press secretary, was a Time magazine correspondent, became Bill Clinton's press
you were
secretary.
Right there the first time.
No. Was he Obama or was he Clinton?
Carney was Obama.
Yeah, he was Obama.
Oh, okay. And
he was Time magazine correspondent in the 90s.
Right. And then he, I think, has a senior job at Facebook or at Meta. He's at one of the big tech.
Yeah.
He's the Washington rep of one of the big tech.
We call them the Washington elite.
Yes.
So they go to the cocktail parties at Georgetown.
So we have Claire and Jay. We have Claire denouncing the evil of anti-Semitism publicly 6-7 months into the horrors that we had seen. We have her privately saying, our problem here really is that we need to brown nose and suck up to Hamas by having our professor, our beloved, what used to be called at Columbia, interestingly, the Oriental Studies Department. I think it's now called MENA or something like that. Rashid Khalidi. Who is Rashid Khalidi? Well, we're back to Barack Obama. He was Barack Obama's best friend. At the time when he was Barack Obama's best friend, was a professor at the University of Chicago, moved to Columbia, and was, in 1982, in Beirut, Lebanon, the spokesman, before his academic career, for the Palestine Liberation Organization during the war between the PLO and Israel. So the person to whom one of the leading figures on the Board of Trustees of Columbia wanted to turn to somehow affiliate the university with the view whose views the university should be promulgating in the wake of October 7th was the spokesman for the Palestine Liberation Organization in 1982. She knew enough 6 months later to go before the House Committee, or thought she knew enough to go before the House Committee and say, thank you so much for shining a spotlight on this ancient evil. As she was speaking, you will remember, the tents started going up. Literally, as they were testifying, the encampment opened at Columbia with those mysteriously procured 200 Coleman tents that were clearly purchased for them by some NGO or foundation, the Tides Foundation. Somebody got them, sent them there. And the
Ilhan Omer's daughter among that encampment.
Yes, Representative Ilhan Omer's daughter was one of the leaders of the encampments. And so the fact that there was a change in the atmosphere such that the Columbia people thought in March that butter shouldn't melt in their mouths when they went before the House Committee, as opposed to the insulting and condescending way that the presidents of Penn, Harvard, and MIT had treated the House Committee, thus leading to the defenestration of the leaders of Penn and Harvard, and then I think the eventual resignation of the head of MIT, or did that not happen? It doesn't matter. Anyway, point is, they knew enough they thought, okay, well, now we have to go back. Now we're going to be nice. We're going to be nice. They didn't call us the first time. Phew, boy, we got out of that one. But now we're going to make nice, and we're going to sit there and we're going to have our Orthodox Jewish head dean of the law school, David Shizer, will sit there with us, and we'll have Minouche, we'll have Claire, we'll have David Greenwald, another big donor who was also on the board, and we will have our token Jewish faculty member all sitting here saying, yes, it's really terrible what's going on here, but we're going to, wonderful things can happen. Also, nothing wonderful could happen. All that could happen was triage or cleanup or something that would make amends for what had been happening to the Jewish students and to the atmosphere on the Columbia campus. And then it got 10 times worse. And now we have Chuck Schumer last year, 6 months before they came to testify, advising them not to speak to Republicans, advising them not to make an issue out of the issue, advising them to keep their heads down, to make his life and the lives of Democrats
It's easy. Also classic senatorial egoism, right? Don't talk to the House. Don't talk to that House committee. They're nothing. That's Mike Johnson and his MAGA people. The condescension. I mean, that is Chuck Schumer's middle name.
Yeah, they are all crazy. They're all crazy.
Can we add one more data point here for listeners who want to? We've been saying how do we get here? How do we get here? Abigail Schreier has an amazing piece in the Free Press this week that looks at how this stuff starts literally in kindergarten. Teachers unions in very large school districts like the LA school district are indoctrinating, and particularly post-October 7th, heavily indoctrinating students in pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, and in many cases anti-Semitic literature, conversations, students who protest, Jewish students who put up postages of hostages, for example, with the permission of school administrators, saw them tore down within moments, all kinds of harassment. It is a very worthwhile read to understand that the problem isn't just college campuses. It starts in K through 12 with the support of the Democratic Party's largest donor, the teachers unions.
Right. That's the Kinderfada by our friend Abigail Schreier at the Free Press. So we got the Free Beacon and we got the Free Press. We got a lot of free. Got a lot of free going on.
We're about freedom.
The whole reality of this, the Schumer part, the different casts of university representatives speaking before the House committees, reveals this gentleman's agreement quality to it all. that is particularly sickening. We know that we do this. We know that we condone this. We know that we don't like Israel, and we preach we indoctrinate students into anti-Jewish behavior and ideas. You don't go out there and say it. Don't keep it to ourselves. It's our thing. You blew it. Don't make it official and public. And that accounts for the gaslighting, too, because this allows them to pretend that it's not really happening.
Is this a good segue to talk about one of the best examples of gaslighting in the 4 years
of the
gaslight administration? Because I woke up this morning, John, to news of a huge scandal, apostrophe gate. We now have
Transcript gate.
Yes. We now have testimony that the White House transcript of Biden's garbage remark was altered post statement. Apparently, and I did not know this, the White House transcription office is a position held by civil servants, career federal employees, and they wrote down what Biden said, which is the only garbage he saw was his supporters. And
Trump supporters, yeah.
Right. He said his, but yeah, he meant Trump supporters. And then White House personnel went to the federal employees. John, we know they're nonpartisan. These are nonpartisan civil servants. How dare the White House question their transcription, and told them to insert the apostrophe to make it the possessive, thus leading to that ridiculous 12 hours where the White House attempted to suggest that Biden was speaking only about the insult comic and not the 47+% of voters who will be for Trump on Tuesday. This is a scandal.
Not just the White House. Jonathan Lemire of MSNBC and AP. David Folkenflik of NPR.
Can I go on a rant? It's not just the media. Look, the media is bad, but to Abe, it's worse than that. And it's worse than that because the reason this is a big deal, and it is a big deal, I think the reporter's response to the apostrophe was completely predictable. This goes to the National Archives. The reason these people who do the transcriptions are civil servants is that this is the record of history. 100 years from now, whatever chip is implanted in Americans' brains that helps them download information, that's the official transcript. And that is important because throughout Biden's presidency, his press shop has constantly tried to clean up the transcripts of his remarks. They take out the garbled, nonsense. They try to make sense of someone who doesn't make sense. But the official transcript has to show what was actually said. And this is a very, very bad habit that I think will need to be looked at by archivists when they go through the papers out of this administration. They are trying to clean up the record of history, and that's wrong.
And it's worse than that. Well, it's one more instance of the Democrats doing what they accuse Trump of doing all the time.
Yeah. Now, By the way, it's worse than that because apparently what happened here is a violation of federal law.
It is a violation of federal law.
There are rules governing how this works, and you can understand
not just a violation of federal law, but to quote the agency itself, a breach of protocol and spoliation of transcript integrity between the stenography and press offices. Now, do you want to be the president who presided over the spoliation of integrity?
Who gave the
between
order?
The stenographer?
Listen. Some of this is sort of funny, but actually, if you think about it,
well, what I'm saying is they're angry. My point is they're angry.
They're angry.
They don't think the transcribers don't think it's a joke. They are super serious about this, and they think that the White House did something they don't have the power to do, and they said so.
They're correct.
The letter that was released to the public, they can't do this.
It is, but you can understand if you think about it for a little bit. Why this is so important, even though it's funny to call it transcript gate or apostrophe gate or whatever, which is, as Christine says, this is the record of history. It's the official record of history. We have thousands of historians and academics and people like that who try to peel back the layer of the official history to tell you what really went on behind the actual transcripts and the things that people said and all of that. But you need the transcript to begin with to work off as the document. And if you can start futzing around with it,
here's what happened.
At the minute that it starts, we will have no reliable record of history. And these people who do this for a living, and they must take personal and professional pride in how they do what they do and how long it takes them to figure out where to put the inaudible parentheses things or the dashes where it says laughter or whatever. That stuff, which must be for them like the rabbis sitting around having Talmudic conversations about why this letter in this document is a little larger in a Hebrew document is a little larger than another letter, which could take 10 years of time in a Talmudic conversation. This is what they do. And political officials are coming in and saying, we're going to rewrite what was said, and you're just going to sit here and take it. And once you open that Pandora's box, who knows what could happen? You're talking about Stalin erasing people's pictures.
They've been covering up the condition for 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. And in the U.S. context, you're talking about your grandchildren or great-grandchildren one day opening up a history textbook, and the discussion of this election will have a paragraph that says, and lots of Republican Trump supporters claimed or pounced. You'll get that the official narrative of history in that summation becomes not that the sitting president of the United States called half the country garbage, but that the supporters of one candidate claimed he called it garbage. And that might not seem a huge distinction, but it is. It is really important. I do get wound up about this. It's like Sandy Berger stuffing archival documents in his socks. It infuriates me, and it should infuriate every American. And Matt's right. I think one of the reasons they came out with this public letter is that this kind of pressure has probably been brought to bear on them before, and nobody said anything.
I think we've known. Sure. We know that they go in and clean up his interviews, and they try to change the transcripts to make things inaudible, even when we know that it's just gobbledygook that's coming from his mouth. I mean, this is why I think the story is so important. It's a double October surprise. It's not just the comment that he made. It's the fact that we get this other additional illustration of the fact that he's non-compos mentis, and people have been hiding this from us for at least 2 years, possibly more. And the only time the public saw it was during the debate. And what happened? They switched out the nominee and created an entire. I mean, it's the scandal's so huge. It's so immense, as one of my forebears might say.
It also raises the question of how much this has been done for him by the media, which can do it and does do it and isn't beholden to the same oaths and vows. It's like the CBS Newsization of the White House record. You know, it's like what 60 Minutes did with Kamala Harris, just rewriting her answers and speaking over them. The other thing I'll say about this is that transcriber who's angry, if Trump wins, Medal of Freedom.
Hero. Can I call back to something that I wrote 12 years ago for commentary? Because one of the more popular things I wrote when I was working for commentary then was a story about how the Obama administration was going into the whitehouse.gov archive of past presidential biographies and dropping information about Barack Obama into other presidents' biographies. This was caught first. Rory Cooper, who has worked in Republican politics for a long time, a wonderful guy. He was at the Heritage Foundation at the time, and he was doing some research on someone, maybe Calvin Coolidge, maybe Reagan, and he was just on the White House website, and he saw this, and he said something, and I said, "There's no way that's like he's got to be joking." And I went through all the things, And it occasioned the piece that I wrote. Then it went pretty far and wide. It occasioned this meme on Twitter called Obama in History, where people just sort of jokingly dropped Obama in. But let me give you an example, okay? On Calvin Coolidge's whitehouse.gov presidential biography, it said, on February 22nd, 1924, Calvin Coolidge became the first president to make a public radio address to the American people. President Coolidge later helped create the Federal Radio Commission, which has now evolved to become the Federal Communications Commission. President Obama became the first president to hold virtual gatherings and town halls using Twitter, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, etc. I'm quoting the etc. Et cetera was on the that et cetera is on was on
between two ferns.
This was on the intern who wrote
this was not on Barack Obama's page. It was on Calvin Coolidge's biography on the White House website. So there is on the subject of Democrats doing things that they're accusing Republicans of doing. There is a long paper trail.
It's so Trumpy. I mean, it's so it's the idea of what Trump is.
But Obama wasn't speaking gobbledygook and saying that to lock up Trump 2 weeks before the election, and then Trump supporters are garbage 1 week before the election, and then biting babies the next day. I mean, I do think there's a slight difference between the silliness that you just pointed out and what's going on with the sitting president of the United States at a time not only of this very important election, but the war everywhere, whether it's Ukraine or Israel. We've only begun to understand, I think, the depth of what has been going on behind the scenes in order to shield the world and the public from Biden's condition. And this is a huge story. And as Christine says, if the media is involved in it as well, how will we ever know actually?
Well,
what's going on?
So history is a guide here, not all that distant history. The very constitutional mechanism that should have been invoked against Joe Biden or invoked for the sake of the country to deal with Joe Biden, the 25th Amendment, exists and was passed because of two presidencies over the previous 30 years. One was passed in 1967. One was the presidency of FDR, when the American people did not know the extent to which his health was compromised, particularly in the last 6 months of his presidency. Oh, and of course, going back further, of course, Woodrow Wilson's stroke, where he was incapacitated for the last 18 months of his presidency. And then after John F. Kennedy's assassination, word began to dribble out about the extent to which Kennedy lived with pain and was taking a cocktail of drugs every day just to get through the day.
He also had Addison's disease. I mean, he had
Addison's disease, and he had war injuries. But he was, as we subsequently found out, taking a cocktail of 12 different drugs, some of them extraordinarily potent, to deal with his pain and get through the day. And by 1967, it was understood by a more assertive Congress that there needed to be a mechanism in place to deal with the crisis of a president in the middle of his presidency who could no longer handle the duties of office. And if you read the 25th Amendment, it's very complicated. There are all sorts of mechanisms, and you need a majority vote of the cabinet, and it only lasts for 3 weeks, and you need 2/3 of the Senate to do that. I mean, it makes it so that using the 25th Amendment to do a coup is all but impossible. But if we find out about the nature and extent of Biden's infirmity over the next couple of years, the scandal of not using the 25th Amendment, or the possibility of doing something to strengthen the 25th Amendment, or to do something as striking as pass a constitutional amendment that says that no person can serve as president past the age of 80. It's not like that couldn't happen. There's an age there's an age limit in the. I mean, there's can't be president.
We might need a ceiling, right? Yeah,
right. There might need to be a ceiling because that's how you deal with a crisis after the crisis is passed. It's like, okay, we just lived through this. How do we not live through it again? And I think that is a real practical prospect, depending on what we find out. And then also the question of how many people were complicit in it and what are they going to do what lengths are they going to go to after Biden is out of office to continue to hide the extent of this? Because we keep saying, oh, the memoirs are going to come out and boy, are they going to show. But, those could be really, really reputation ending for dozens, if not hundreds of people in the Democratic Party, including its most senior leaders outside of the people who work directly in the White House. And there might be a conspiracy of silence that goes well beyond the end of the Biden administration.
Yeah. I think the Playbook Playbook that had the piece about Biden, his search for a legacy, a presidential library, and his fundraising for it is not doing so well. And now, of course, since Hunter is out of business and can't play the influence game because of his trials, they're having trouble raising money that way. But so I think that there will be a quick move by the Democrats to just pretend that Joe Biden never happened. He's a one-term president. He's a failed president. I don't care what people say. It's a failed presidency, and let's just move on. Even if Harris wins, it will be the same thing. See you later. Now because it's Harris, and if Trump wins, we don't want to think about what happened for those 4 years because we need to move on and figure out what happens in the post-Trump world. Also, interestingly enough, they talked about some of the sites for this potential library, and it included the University of Delaware, where Joe Biden went. Syracuse is interested as well. And then the UPenn is interested because that was where he set up shop.
The Penn Biden
$1 million salary, right, for the Biden Center, which we still don't really know what was going on there. But I think this ignores the obvious option, which is you make it in Rehoboth, Delaware. You put it right there, and you put it next to the popcorn shop. Yeah, and the ice cream. Well, no, you can preserve the garage.
The documents.
You preserve the garage. You put like that plexiglass in front.
Office.
Yes, that you can see. Yes, and here's the car where Hunter was photographed with his paramour.
Yeah,
and you can, but make it a tourist attraction, and then when the Washingtonians go to the beach every year, they can stop by and visit the presidential library of Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
Matt, you say the fundraising, the fundraising is low, but I just want to point out that if you move a comma,
right.
Actually, it's
in the transcript. That's well. Right. That's exactly right. But they could put it, the Shady Acres rest home in the library of the Shady Acres.
Well, the thing about the area, I visit the area of the Delaware beaches quite often, and that it is becoming a spot for retirees. I mean, the development, even 20 minutes from the beach is quite active there. I mean, a lot of construction. And so, yeah, he could put it out there in the retirement home. That would be a way to, elder care could be his post-presidential issue.
I am very alarmed to hear this, Matt, because, the main product of Rehoboth Beach, as you know, is saltwater taffy. Yeah. And I do not think saltwater taffy is a safe food for the elderly to ingest because of their dental work.
Well,
I
he likes ice cream, though. We know that he does.
Soft ice cream is very good for the dental work.
I've diverted us too long. Should we talk about this?
Wait. I want to speak to John's point here about what could happen in the future regarding this scandal. I'm very skeptical because if this were to become a scandal, it would be one now. I have a hunch that most Americans have some sense that our current president is incapable of serving fully as president. And the issue has already been memory hold, ignored. Kamala hasn't addressed what part of it she knew or any of that. What could happen, what I could very easily foresee happening, is if Trump wins in a kind of Freudian projection, the efforts to say that he needs to be taken out by the 25th Amendment, that will start as early as Russiagate did.
It's already started.
Right, yes. The garbage truck, right? They're doing the footage of him slightly stumbling while trying to open the door.
Which, by the way, I'm sorry. So the footage is of him trying to open the door to the truck, to the garbage truck, with that handle at the bottom of the stairs of the garbage truck. Now, I have not entered a garbage truck, but I do have a memory of having to get into a big truck at one point for some reason, or even a tow truck that had that lower handle. And it's an awkward maneuver. It's not a handle of the sort, it goes up, not sideways. And he stumbled because it's hard to open the door from that. You know, he's clearly not infirm, but the narrative is already starting.
Well, it started in the first term. There was that debate about removing him through the 25th Amendment.
And the drinking the water.
Literally, the first week on Morning Joe, they were talking about invoking.
I think Ross Galbraith wrote a column.
Because it was crazy. But in that case, because he was mentally unstable.
But it would be
the idea.
Well, that hasn't changed.
It would be turbocharged this time because of the Biden issue. To say, oh, you accused us of leaving an infirm person in office? What about this and that?
Right, and then they would say, and then the Republicans would say, "All right, remove him and make J.D. Vance president of the United States of America."
Well, there's an insurance policy for you. Anyway,
that was the joke. The Kamala was the insurance policy for Biden. That was the joke in his term. He'll have the same.
Okay, Matt, you want to?
This came over the transom while we were talking.
Yes,
the jobs report for the month of October. Economists were expecting something in the low 100,000s, considering all that's happened the month of October with these awful hurricanes. The job number that came in, 12,000, which is woof.
And inflation also up this week.
For the final jobs report before the election, that is not what Kamala Harris wanted to see at all.
That's for sure. A, that's for sure. B, so there are some explanations that would suggest why the report is so bad. Obviously, the hurricanes mean that a whole bunch of people are going to be filing for unemployment insurance because their workplaces no longer exist. There can't be any real job growth during a hurricane season, and Boeing is on strike. So there are a couple of major strikes. So you have tens of thousands of people out of work on strike. But 12,000 is an absolutely horrific number. And it just goes to show how our macroeconomic data are so incomprehensible now. Because on the one hand, it's a 12,000 job growth month. And on the other hand, the GDP number was almost 3 last week. And on the other hand, the Dow is approaching 43,000. And once again, making sense out of the American economy with these numbers is almost impossible. But did she want to have bragging rights to go through the weekend saying, you know, inflation's down, the economy's cooking, and we just got another boffo jobs report? And she lost the third leg of that troika. And not only did she lose it, but Trump can now spend the weekend saying 12,000. You want me? I'll have 12 million jobs. In February, I will create 12 million jobs. You'll never have seen, no one has ever seen it before. And, he'll say anything.
Harris will have Cardi B with her at a rally tonight. So that could be the decisive factor. And she had J-Lo last night in Nevada. So we're back to the celebrities telling Americans how to vote stage of the Democratic campaign. Some of it cringier than others.
just depends on how Cardi B dresses. Really, how she dresses at the rally will make a very big difference, because if she wears her usual outfit,
it would get a lot of attention.
How that will tell with the suburban moms.
And then I think the cringiest so far, leaving aside the West Wing cast, which is still kind of like wandering the wasteland of America, trying to get people to vote Democratic, which it's been doing for 20 years now. The Avengers assembled online yesterday to put out the vote for Kamala Harris. And there's just something about seeing extremely wealthy, good-looking people talk about how wonderful they are and how all of their political choices are so pure that, I don't know, just kind of gets my goat. I don't like watching that. It doesn't work on me.
So, what you hear, and this all goes to the famous book, The Extinction of Experience, the number one book
by Esquire.
Of 2024, according to Esquire magazine, is that we're now told that celebrity endorsements are more meaningful than ever, though you would think they would be less meaningful, because celebrities, in a weird way, have less star power than they used to. When, a movie star didn't appear very often. So if they appeared, it was like, whoa, my God, there's someone walking down the street, because of social media, because J-Lo has 12 million followers on Instagram. So if she endorses Harris, the impressions, 12 million people are going to see that she did it, and the impressions and the event, Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and Chris Saldana and Chris so-and-so. I don't think Chris Pratt was among them. I didn't notice.
Well, I don't think Chris Hemsworth can vote in American elections.
That's probably right. And I think Chris Pratt is a right-winger, so I didn't notice the Avengers. I think Robert Downey Jr. is a right-winger, too, so I don't know whether he was in there. I didn't notice.
Well, it'd be great if he did something as his character, Louis Strauss, from Oppenheimer, for Trump.
So he was trying. Is that true?
No. I was projecting.
Because, of course, the whole structure of Oppenheimer is he sounds like he's defending Oppenheimer, and then in the end, it turns out that he's the guy.
Strauss was a right-wing hero of the 1950s, so
that's
it'd be funny to have him come up.
Anyway, all right. So he was on the call, but there is this. There is this idea.
The Hollywood celebrity stuff and the dilution of celebrity with social media has also created this entire raft of influencers who have been actively courted. I mean, Trump's got a few here and there, but the Kamala Harris campaign has an official outreach to influencers. They were at the convention. I mean, this is her thing. I do think the expectation now is the only time it makes news is if someone who one would think would vote for the Democrat announces they're voting for the Republican, and occasionally vice versa. I think Schwarzenegger saying, I'm going to vote. There are lots of very funny stories about why Schwarzenegger might feel more simpatico with, say, a woman whose husband also impregnated a nanny, but we won't go there because we're very highbrow. But that seems to make news now. Taylor Swift made news with her endorsement both times because there was a sense that she understood that maybe she shouldn't endorse at all, and so her choice mattered. But otherwise, I think it's just noise for most people.
Anyway, it's this whole question of whether or not what you just want to put in front of people is reminders that they should do this, right? That you can't do better than that, and that's what advertising is for, and all of that. It's just like a nudge. It's all a nudge. It's a little like a reminder. Maybe it comes across your Instagram for 5 seconds, and that taken all together over the course of a day or of a week, if you see 20 or 30 different things, people that you like saying, I'm voting for Harris, then maybe that softens you when you were like not going to do it, or you weren't going to bother to vote or go out to the polls or something like that. It's all very untested. It's all untested. And of course, after the fact, we're going to get all kinds of studies from people who want to promote all of this, showing that it was incredibly important, assuming Harris were to win, and therefore that these endorsements could be used as an element to say that she got over the top because of the help from them. But we haven't discussed. One last thing that we should discuss is this Trump sitting with Tucker Carlson. I'm happy to say that Tucker Carlson was able to sit with Trump, even though he was attacked physically by a demon. which surprised me, by the way, because, I think demons are on Tucker's side. So I don't think really that they would attack him. They might ask for his autograph. But Tucker was sitting with Trump last night, and they went into Dick Cheney territory and Liz Cheney territory. And Trump said something about how these hawks, let's see how hawkish they are, if they are standing there with a gun facing 9 people, with guns. Let's see how much they like war.
It's important to hear exactly what he said. He said, she's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? And let's see how she feels about it, when the guns are trained on her face.
Right. Okay. So if you take that remark and you eliminate the first sentence, it sounds like he's calling for her to face a firing squad, but she gets to have a gun. Like, she gets to have a gun to see if she can defend herself against the firing squad. As you say, if you expand it out, she's doing these warmongers. Let's see how they like it being in war. And he is being supported in this effort by some really horrific, now 3 times he's done this rhetoric from J.D. Vance, obviously a Marine veteran, saying Dick Cheney murdered millions of Arabs, and that, Iraq was the worst thing that ever happened, and Dick Cheney murdered millions of Arabs, which is clearly we're again back in this headspace where everyone is just trying to get Arabs in Michigan to vote for them somehow. And so now J.D. Vance has picked up the mantle of the Arab vote hunter in Michigan by talking about Dick Cheney
and
murdering
Trump is going to
Arabs.
Dearborn this weekend.
Well, the polls, if you believe the polls, and I don't believe any of this stuff when it comes to these subsection polls in particular, are showing that they're tied or something like that among the Arabs in Michigan. So whatever effort the Democrats have made over the course of the last year to neutralize the problem, supposedly, of the Biden administration's excessive support for Israel. So don't make me laugh, but its excessive support for Israel apparently haven't worked.
I just want to make one comment about the setting of Trump's comments yesterday. It was in a interview with Tucker Carlson as part of Tucker Carlson's roadshow. And to me, this just reinforces the argument of my column at the Free Beacon today, that Trump is extremely confident headed into the final days of the election. If you think that you're going to take time to go to a Tucker Carlson concert and give him an exclusive interview and play to the Tucker Carlson supporter, which I'm pretty sure is already in the bag with Trump, right after, or rather as part of a day where you also go to New Mexico, a place where there could be some rumblings under the radar that trend Republican, but it does not seem, based on public polling, that state is in contention. You have a sense of Trump saying, I'm going all in, I'm confident, I'm going to win, and I don't need to reach out to the Nikki Haley side of the Republican equation. I don't really need to reach out to the female voters who may still be motivated by their concern over the future of abortion rights. I'm going to go and tell my base once again that I will be on their side as long as they're on mine. It's a risky move in my view, but it's a move that clearly is motivating the campaign strategy in the final days. They think that they're going to win.
So let's offer some evidence that they're going to win, and then some evidence that they're not going to win, or not evidence, but what tea leaves, whatever you want to call it.
In this election, I think we're reading entrails, not tea leaves. But
fair enough. Okay. So we have the polls in Pennsylvania. The best polls for Harris this week in Pennsylvania have it tied. Our friends at Echelon Insights, Kristen Soltis Anderson and Patrick Ruffini, who run Echelon Insights, they had a poll yesterday drop with Trump up by 6. That seems to be an outlier. Nobody else is showing a number that strong. But Harris is not showing strong numbers. The trend in Pennsylvania has been away from Harris. And again, the trend is tiny. She's up 2, then she moves to, up 1 to up 0. Is noise, could be statistical noise, but it's not in her direction. And then you have the thing that I think is the most interesting, and that is Michigan. And I'm not here to talk about the Arabs in Michigan as part of this, but it is not looking good for her in Michigan. The polls are very close to tied. That's a state that Biden won by 150,000 votes. And I listened yesterday to Tara Palmieri's podcast. It's called Somebody's Got to Win. And she had on Debbie Dingell, who is, when you go, the go-to person in Michigan who is not in government to talk about Democratic politics in Michigan. And Debbie Dingell said,
but only recently not in government.
Right. She was the wife of the longest-serving Democratic congressman. She took his seat when he died, and now, but she was even long before she was like head of PR for General Motors, and she is as wired as you can get and knows everything. And she said, at this point in 2016, I knew Hillary was going to lose. At this point in 2020, I knew that Biden was going to win. I don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday. So you may call me Debbie Downer, she said, but I am Debbie determined. And I thought, oh my God, she thinks Harris is going to lose. You don't say that. She could say Harris was going to win. Now, she wants to maintain her cred as a person who is a no BS, honest broker, even though she is a Democrat and wants Harris to win. But again, entrails, not even entrails. Like she said, I knew Hillary was going to lose. I knew Biden was going to. Now it's up to you, the voter. And obviously Harris could win everywhere. She could win Pennsylvania. She could win Michigan. She could win Wisconsin.
Well, she has to. She has to win all three now.
She has to
based
win.
On what we're seeing in the public polling.
Right.
Her only path now is by sweeping the blue wall states.
Now, our friend Chris Starwald was on yesterday, and you, Matt, and Christine, you were not on, said one interesting thing about Georgia. He said you would think by this time that Trump would have Georgia wrapped up, but the polling does not suggest that Trump has Georgia wrapped up. It's still a 1 to 2 point race. And, there is the 30% of the electorate in Georgia is black. And, but if you again look at, then we have all this data from the early voting, which is all very confusing because we don't know who's cannibalizing what, or if you're talking about everybody voting who would otherwise have voted. But even in Georgia, I think you don't. All they have in Georgia, this is one of the weirdest things. Maybe it's part of the Voting Rights Act or the Civil Rights Act of '64. They don't say in other states with early voting, they say Democrats have this number of votes and Republicans have this number of votes. That's not what's reported about Georgia. It's white and black, which is really chilling. Like, is that one of the more chilling things? It's like, here's how many white people have voted and here's how many black people have voted. It's like, what country are we living in? But anyway, so the black number is under 30. And it has to be over 30 for her. I mean, like she is lagging Biden in 20, or she is lagging where their target of what they needed was well over 30, and she is still under 30. And early voting in Georgia ends tomorrow. So unless there is a huge surge, they're going to go into Election Day in Georgia, not where they wanted to be, according to their own calculations, with the black vote. So Trump's confidence isn't crazy. It's not, I don't think it's emotionally smart to run like you're winning, really, even though I know he says we won by a lot, we always win by a lot, and we're going to win by a lot. I do think that the surrender of the women's vote, that he is not going to end the weekend going for female votes, is very interesting. Because that's where you would close. You would close,
and they turn out to vote, and there are more of them. I mean, they just
there's that.
He already said he's going to protect the women whether they like it or not. What more do you want him to say for the women's vote?
That's
the closing argument.
Yeah, and so that's the. But I mean, I don't know. Are we in like a 60s sitcom? Because the Julia Roberts ad is the It's okay. You can vote for Kamala. Just don't tell your husband. You can, it's like, don't tell your husband, but you're allowed to vote for anybody you want to, right? That's the Harris ad. They're seeing something that says they need to give permission to female voters with Trumpy husbands to secretly go and vote for Trump. And Trump saying to men, you know what? Your wife is telling you I'm terrible and I'm a terrible. Don't worry. I'm going to protect her even if you don't want it. And then like the Harris campaign is saying he sounds like a rapist. That's what my favorite extension here.
It's all condescending to women. All of it. All of it. Condescending.
The level of condescension is just
horrible,
astounding. And also to men. I'm sorry, but don't worry. I'm going to protect your wife. I know they don't want it, but I'm going to do it anyway because that's the kind of guy I am.
Well, I disagree because I think it's very smart of Democrats to put out a series of ads reminding women that they can vote, reminding them that they have won the franchise and earned the franchise and that now women can vote. I think that's the purpose of the Julia Roberts ad. In case you didn't hear, not everyone follows politics like we do, John. Not everybody is on Twitter every day. True. You may not know all the legislation or the constitutional amendments that have been passed and all this other stuff. So this is a way of the non-political obsessives who may not have heard that women have gotten franchise. Now they know.
Okay. Well, Seth, I think that's a very valuable reminder. Sometimes we need to provide these civics lessons in our advertising and in presidential campaigns to the less informed voter to explain to them that they have a choice, like when you get a phone call that tells you the wrong date of the election to try to trick you into going to the polling place on Wednesday, which is, people have gone to jail for this. And then Jimmy Kimmel made a whole joke about it on air. I don't know whether he is therefore subject to prosecution for providing false information to voters. But that would be funny if he were actually indicted for voter suppression on a late night TV show. Anyway, so silly season. There is also silly season upon us. But again, the Cook political report just came out. Cook is saying essentially they think that the Republicans are going to end the night with 54 Senate seats. And if they end the night with 54 Senate seats, which I guess means they might win Pennsylvania. I'm trying to think of didn't look specifically at the article, but
they'd win in addition to West Virginia and Montana, which brings them to 51. They'd win Ohio,
right.
And they'd win Michigan and Pennsylvania. Right, that would get them 52, 3, 4.
Right, yeah. or Wisconsin,
or possibly Wisconsin.
And oddly enough, there was
they're not winning. Yeah. Republicans are not winning the Michigan Senate seat without also winning the state at the top of the.
Well, that's John's point. Point. And also, there has been some polling that shows Kerry Lake finally closing the gap with Gallego.
With Ruben Gallego, right.
So that would be another one as well.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy. I mean, but again, if that's the case, and I think that would highlight that's a national rejection of the Democratic Party. That's not just they do have good candidates obviously McCormick is a terrific candidate. Hovde turns out to be a terrific candidate. Rogers is a terrific candidate on the Republican side. Moreno, who is running against Sherrod Brown, has many liabilities, but that is a Trump plus 8 or 10 state. So Brown is really, really, really fighting partisan headwinds there as one of the most left-wing members of the Senate. Also, it's not like he's Fetterman running in Pennsylvania where he could kind of hook himself to Trump, maybe, if that were the case. Fetterman's not running, obviously. But I mean, if they get to 54, 55, A, that means Trump wins, and B, it means that something larger happened over the course of the last 4 years.
Yeah, it'd be the highest number of Republican senators since 2004. And that was the last time they had 55 seats. And that, of course, Bush won. And he won Nevada in 2004, and he won Virginia in 2004.
Virginia's within 5 points. I don't think that he'll win. He's not spending any resources in Virginia.
It could be a very good night for Republicans. It could also be a very disappointing night for Republicans.
Just like 2022,
yep.
So on Harris's side, you do have the fact that there have been these reminders over the course of the week of why it is that Americans don't like Trump. Beginning with the rally, and I'm not just talking about Hinchcliffe, the comedian, but the entire effect of the rally. I think these remarks about Liz Cheney, which are going to be amplified through the media all weekend at the beginning of next week, don't help, because he's saying it'll be let's see a lady in front of with 9 guns trained on her head. Is not a great look for anybody.
I don't think it helps every time he comes out and says Kamala Harris is a very low IQ person either.
There's no reason for it. He's satisfying. He's scratching an itch, or there's no, he's now playing for all the marbles, and he's in a strong position, and satisfying his shock jock thing is just not prudent. I know he's not a prudent, and he doesn't believe in prudence as a political strategy. So I'm not suggesting, I'm not being science fictional, but it's like, just go out in the garbage truck. That was good. Do the garbage truck, dance on stage, look like you're happy, have Melania come out once more if she'll agree to it. I don't know how much he had to pay her on the side to get her to show up at the rally, but she did. I don't know, whatever. But obviously he is who he is, and he is going to end the way he ends. And she doesn't seem confident is the point. Right? I mean, that you're talking about Trump's confidence, Matt, in your piece.
Yeah. Well, I think that what you get from the Democrats is we're looking at the early vote, and we're seeing signs that the early vote is heavily female. And so if that's the case, then that gives us a sign of hope, because the best bet for Harris is that she wins on a surge in female turnout, just like Obama won on a surge of black turnout in 2012. The polls in 2012, which led many astray, including me. I'm always being led astray.
You look like such a cynical.
I have tried to be steady and detached, and yet here I'm just like this babe in the woods. I'm just following these polls. But if you recall 2012, the polls there showed that Romney had narrowed the gap with Obama, and that Romney was ahead with independents. And yet the election was called before the 11 o'clock news because of this huge surge in African-American turnout for Obama. And so the Harris people are counting on there being a similar turnout among women, breaking very heavily toward Harris in 2024 that would put her under the edge. I mean, that's really their only argument that they're saying right now. So they could be right, but a lot of the other evidence points in a different direction.
Look, Trump has done much better in the early vote based on what we can tell, and based on polling where you ask people if they voted, who they voted for, than anybody would have expected. It's about an 8-point gap in the battleground states in Harris's favor. Remember, we might have expected that would have run 15 to 20 points worse for Trump, as I think or for Republicans, as it has in earlier elections. So you have a different gender gap question, which we brought up the other day, which is, there's a gender gap. So women are going for Harris by 15 or 16 points, or 12 points or 13 points. But if men go for Trump by 17, that completely neutralizes. Again, as Christine said, there are more female voters. So if we're
they're
going by gender,
to vote. They're
more likely to vote
too. Yes,
but so Trump would have to neutralize the gender gap. he would have to do better among men than she does among women to, because women are 3% more likely to vote or something like that. Right now, the numbers suggest that may be happening because the early vote is so close, relatively speaking.
But my question is as follows. Let's say she does win the presidency. Do you think she'll give a press conference? You think she'll do that?
Let's talk.
Do you think she's going to be, because if she wins, she's going to be the president of the United, she's going to be the commander in chief of the United States of America. Think she's going to, how many interviews is she going to give after winning the presidency?
Classically, what Matt is referring to, I think, or in general, is that on the Thursday of after Election Day, now because of the election and counting and stuff, maybe it'll be later than that. But on the Thursday after the election, the victor gives an 11 a.m. press conference.
Talks about what's going to happen.
Well, but also says, and I want to thank Jen O'Malley Dillon. She did such a fantastic, and and here he is, Turd Blossom, our very own Carl Rove, the architect, Turd Blossom.
That's the speech, and then
you gives the Oscar speech, and then
you have to answer questions, about what you're going to do in this new position as the head of what still is, though it's slipping fast, the most powerful country in the world. I mean, I'm wondering if that's going to happen.
Well, maybe Biden can give the press conference.
Biden will give it.
Yeah. By the way, I wouldn't ordinarily promote Saturday Night Live. I don't have to. It's not anything. The commentary recommends. How about this? Tomorrow night, Saturday Night Live. I haven't seen it. Obviously, no one knows what's on it. But two things. Number one, the best comedian in America, John Mulaney, is the host. And I think that means that we can expect another deathless and genius sketch, giant musical number like his famous Diner Lobster, one of the greatest sketches of all time. So there's John Mulaney appearing, hosting. And of course, this is my point, what they do with Dana Carvey, who is doing the greatest Biden impression, the greatest presidential impression ever over these last shows. They're going to have to do Biden and garbage.
And Biden.
I haven't been as excited to watch a TV show in forever, just for the cold open with Dana Carvey. And I mean, maybe they'll soft pedal, but they don't have to, because Biden's not running. I think they've made the determination that as long as they're nice to Harris, they can kill Biden time and time and time again. And so it's going to be, it's worth your time at 11:30 tomorrow night to tune in to see what could be an epic and historic sketch about the 25th Amendment and the importance of invoking it at certain times in American history. Okay, well, I guess that unless anybody has anything else that we failed to bring up, we will wish you a wonderful weekend. And with the fifth inning of the Yankees game in the rearview mirror, increasingly rearview mirror, and we'll be back on Monday. Again, can't believe we're actually coming to a head here. It's like we're getting out of no exit, out of Sartre's play No Exit. The exit sign is now suddenly flashing.
That's what you think.
Okay. So, for Abe, Matt, Seth, and Christine, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.